it's not working after 5 days, don't tell yourself, oh, there's got to be a better way.
I don't know, right? I don't know what the future holds. But
Reward systems work in two ways. You're a rat, right? You're either getting chased by the cat or you're running after the cheese. They don't want to cold call and text and get cussed out on the phone, right? So either clicks or it doesn't.
welcome to another episode of the Transform Podcast, episode number 12 with Jake. I'm extremely excited to have a conversation with him, get to know him better. Remember that we're here to talk to you about ways to transform your health, wealth, and relationships. Without further ado, Jake, brother, welcome to the podcast. Tell me a little bit about you.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. I'm always happy to come on and chat real estate. Like I said, it's not really work for me, so it's awesome. Yeah, I guess my business partner and I are in the midst of. I'm from St. Petersburg, Florida, or not from, but I moved here 3 months ago, and we're in the midst of building up a wholesale real estate business. We can get into the details of that if people don't know what wholesale real estate is, but we're in the process of scaling that up with the goal to get out of it, have a cash flowing business, and start tackling some multifamily. But that's
Beautiful.
kind of the 1-2 on what we're doing here.
Tell me more about you, Jake, as a person. Bring me back to your childhood. You're pretty young, just like me, but just bring me back to more of you personally.
Yeah, so Jake, I was very into hockey for a majority of my life. So a year round, 24/7, I played from time I was like 4 to 19 years old. So I always obviously big dreams, NHL, that type of thing. Didn't end up working out, got injured and some other roadblocks. So I stopped doing that. But that was a huge part of my life. And I look back on it very fondly. It was a great season in my life. It served me for a good purpose, taught me a lot of things like the dedication and drive and commitment and all these things that transfer into the entrepreneurial world. It taught me a lot about that. I look back fondly on that time, even though it didn't turn out as I probably would have wanted to, right? But I think the position I'm in now, definitely I should be where I am now, right? So I'm glad that it happened the way it did.
Beautiful,
Love
brother.
being active and like I said, hockey and being outdoors and doing all those things. So it was kind of a natural transition from once hockey ended. I had about a year in my life where I didn't know really what I wanted to do. Then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Then I was like, okay, real estate's the next thing. So now I've just been putting all my time and energy into real estate for the past 3 years.
Tell me what brought you into the industry. What brought you to real estate specifically?
Yeah. So again, it was the cliche read Rich Dad Poor Dad. You either read it and it's like, oh my gosh, Rich Dad Poor, like this is amazing, or you give it to someone and they're like, yeah, it was cool, and it just doesn't click for them, right? So either clicks or it doesn't. For my business partner and I, it definitely clicked, and it was kind of a natural progression because after hockey, I really tried to figure out what did I want to do. I was putting a lot of effort into college, and I was finance and accounting degree, and I was going to go try to get the best corporate job I could. But then after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I was like, do I really want to do this, right? If I'm probably just going to want to get out of this in 5 years, why don't I just not even start down that path and just start building the real estate business, right? So we got in, started doing a bunch of things at once. We were doing multifamily, being realtors, and we were wholesaling all at the same time. Thought we could do it all. We realized we couldn't. But when you start, you're Superman.
Yeah.
We whittled down to just wholesaling, and that's what we've been doing ever since.
So tell me about the mindset shift. Like, okay, let's do it all to like full focus on what did that do for you guys?
Yeah, it's been everything. And even to this day, like we're still keeping narrowing the focus as much as we can. Cause as you start to scale a business, there's like a saying, simple scales, fancy fails, right? And you start to really see it as you bring on a team. The more simple and focused you can keep things, the easier it is to teach someone else as well, right?
Right.
So we wanted to keep it as simple as we could. And it's really hard to get traction. It's just hard to get traction in the beginning, period. Right? Period. Let alone trying to do 3 different things at once, right? So we really found ourselves like, yeah, we're getting success here and there, but like, hey, if we really want to scale this thing and see some real success, we got to put all of our efforts into one thing, right? And initially, my business partner Isaiah and I, our roles were not aligned either. Like we were not complementing each other. We were both doing acquisitions in the beginning, and that's not the bet. You want like a yin and a yang, right? So
Right.
eventually, we got it down from multifamily realtor to wholesaling to wholesale. But then we were both still doing some acquisitions things. And eventually Isaiah got onto the disposition side of wholesaling. And I can kind of, should I explain wholesale real quick?
Yeah,
Brief
I
overview?
think it will be beneficial. I know
Yeah.
what it is. I'm a banker, by the way, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think it will be beneficial.
So wholesale real estate, I like to look at it, think about it as the acquisition side for everyone who fixes and flips properties, right? They don't want to cold call and text and get cussed out on the phone and do all these things all day long, right? So that's where we as wholesalers come in. That's why we have value in the marketplace. But we essentially run what I like to call a direct to seller uh, machine, right? A direct to seller machine. So we're in the business of sourcing off market real estate opportunities. So what we'll do is we'll go get a property under contract, right? Purchase and sale. It may be $100,000. So the property might be worth 250 fixed up, right? But it needs a ton of work. So if we get it under at 100, we might be able to sign the rights to that purchase and sale to a fix and flipper for maybe 115,000, right? And then we just make a spread. And the fix and flipper is super happy because they got a deal, right? We get it at a price that there's still room for the fix and flipper to put money in and make money, right?
Right.
Sellers getting their problem solved. So we try to create what we call a win-win-win, right? Win for the seller, win for us, win for the buyer. But in most simple terms, wholesaling is just assigning the PNS, making a fee.
Yeah, that's beautifully explained. Pretty much getting the rights to sell the property, finding the seller, and making a little profit in between the contracted price you have and whatever you sell it for.
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenal. Tell me more about that world because it's quite interesting to me. How do you get in touch with these sellers and how do you convince them? I've always been fascinated with that.
Yeah, so I guess that's a misconception right there. I guess because within the wholesale real estate world, it's to us it seems huge because that's all we're in, but it's really just it's a niche, right?
Right.
So reaching out to them, right? So we use software providers that aggregate public data like town records and that type of thing. And we'll be able to sort through and say, hey, let's look in Miami, Florida. We can search through all property owners that have owned it for at least 20 years, right? And maybe we
Mm,
pull a list of that. So people have owned it for 20 years and it's an absentee house, meaning that it's a secondary property for them, right? Maybe their mail goes to their primary address, but they have an absentee house that is they're in 123 Main Street. Maybe it's 127 Main Street is their absentee. And what we're targeting is that tired landlord avatar, right? Own the property for 20 years, is sick of it, needs some work, wants to dump it, right? So that's how we're going after the data. Now, how do we convince? So we're not convincing, right? You'll never convince a seller to sell their house 60 cents on the dollar. You'll just never do it, right? So the price already kind of has to be there, right?
okay.
But typically
Makes sense.
these sellers have issues, right? These are people who are willing to trade price for speed and convenience. And typically it's about 5 to 7% of any given market. So it's a very small subsector, right? Of 100 people selling their house, 95 of them are going to end up listing it, right? We're going after that 5% that's like, I can't list it because I need to sell it now for X, Y, or Z reason, right? Pre foreclosure, right? They have liens on the property. Maybe they're moving and they need to sell it quick, or they inherited the property and they just they don't want to deal with it. And they're like, hey, I know I could get more money, but I'd rather just sell it.
Get
And
it
the
done.
way the way I the best analogy I have for it is you're driving down the road, you want to get a bottle of water, right? You stop at the corner Quick Mart, right? And you pay $3 for a single bottle of water. But you know
True.
dang well you could go to Stop and Shop and get a package of waters, and that individual bottle might be 30 cents, right? But you're like, hey, I'm willing to for the speed and convenience, I'm willing to pay more. So it's the same thing with wholesale real estate. Listen, I know I can get more if I do this with my property, but for the speed and convenience, I'm willing to sell it to you at this price, right?
Fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Amazing. So tell me about the process itself. So you source the leads, you reach out to this very small segment of sellers that are distressed and they need speed to market.
Hmm.
How does the conversation go?
Yeah. So the conversation is initially so I'll kind of explain how the acquisition side works first. So right now we have 3 cold callers, a lead follow-up manager, and me in the acquisition seat, which I'm going to be hiring a closer soon. But there's essentially 3 departments on the acquisition side: lead generation, lead follow-up, and acquisitions. So lead generation is going to be calling these massive data sets, right? And just
Right.
looking for anyone who says, hey, I'm looking to sell my property and I have a reason to sell. That's not what you're offering. That's not a real reason. Well, if the price is right, I'd sell it. That's what we call a
Right.
tire kicker, right? Um, so once someone says, hey, I have a reason to sell, it's going to get pushed to the CRM, which is where all of our leads live. That's where we can follow up with them, take notes on them. My lead follow-up manager is then going to qualify those incoming leads because, right, a lot of them might be messing with our lead generation people. We got to make sure there's a real reason to sell. And then the biggest thing is she's going to assess the timeline of the lead. Are they within 90 days of making a decision to sell? If so, it's going to get appointment set for the acquisitions department to take them through a process, see if we're a good fit, right? If they're with beyond 90 days, it's going to be a follow-up for lead management. So that's kind of the life of the lead. Someone's interested in selling, comes in, lead follow-up manager is going to qualify it. Are they within 90 days? If they are, boom, up to acquisitions, right? So in terms of the cold call conversation, it's just a basic, hey, is this Alex? Hey, Alex, this is Jake. I know this call is completely out of the blue here. I was actually calling about your property on 123 Main Street. Yeah, I just want to see if you'd ever consider an offer on that property. And that's the intro,
Wow.
right? And then once they say, yeah, I consider it, love it, love it. And then you're just going to ask some questions about, well, what has you considering selling it? Getting started, not to complicate it, when you get into like a full-fledged business, you want to have a legitimate sales process that you take people through. It's just going to help your conversion rate, obviously. But in the beginning, the 4 pillars of pre-qualifying, really the most basic things that you need to get, right? And this is the condition of the property, right? Does it need a lot of work or is it all fixed up? The timeline to sell, the motivation, the reason for selling, and the price, right? Those 4 things. If you get someone has an ugly property, they're looking to sell it now, they have a strong motivation, right? And the price is right, that's a
That's the
pre-qualified seller, right? So
Okay.
that's someone you want to make an offer on, right? So when you're getting started, biggest question is like, people are getting started, they're not afraid of people saying no, they're afraid of people saying yes, right? Because like, oh
Right.
gosh, what do I say if they say they want to sell their property? You get the 4 pillars of pre-qualifying, right?
That's
Kind
incredible.
of how the
And you
conversation
guys
goes.
got it. You guys got it down to a process. How do you go from playing hockey? There's got to be a gap in here. How do you go from playing hockey to being this sophisticated and knowing how to do this process so quick?
Man, it's just time. So I'm
So give me
25
a timeline.
now. Yeah, so the timeline is, so with hockey, there's a league called junior hockey. It's like you go to it after high school before you go to college. So I went there for 2 years. So going into college, I was 2 years older than everyone. So I went in as 20 years old, right? So I'm 25 now. I graduated a couple years ago.
Wow.
But I had 1 year where I didn't know what I wanted to do. But over 3 years of just listening to podcasts every single day in real estate and being in real estate communities, you start to understand this thing. And we're not reinventing the wheel. Everyone who has a wholesale business operates it in the same way. We're just copying people, really. So the only reason I know is from being around the people. Ultimately, it's being in a community. And that's
Right.
one of the biggest things I preach is being in a community when you're in the entrepreneurial space, just because it is so difficult to get started and get over those hurdles, especially for young entrepreneurs, right? In their 20s, they might be living with their parents,
Yeah.
their friends. Maybe they were in college and they're off in the corporate world. And then you got mom over here, Johnny, it hasn't been working for 90 days. You should probably just go get a real job.
Right.
Really reconsider. So that can really weigh on people, especially when it's people that like love and care about you, and they do love and care about you, and they want to do what's best for you, but they don't always necessarily know
Yeah.
what's best for
They
you,
might not
right?
understand it.
So because they're just giving advice based off their life experiences, right? So if they
Right.
were never an entrepreneur, they don't really understand that. So getting around the people that have done it. Hey, Alex, yeah, I just went through that. Sellers just being indecisive, you can't close them. Like I dealt with that last week. This is how I got through it, So getting those kind of tips and pointers is absolutely everything. It's how I've managed to stick with it.
Phenomenal, man. So
Yeah.
tell me more about the becoming an entrepreneur. Tell me about the hurdles.
Yeah, the hurdles are yeah, it's like what hurdles haven't we hit here? Man, it's like so much mindset. It's absolutely incredible. The business is shocking, painfully basic.
Okay.
Painfully freaking basic. It's just having conversations with sellers, have conversations and make offers. That's all it is, right? But one of my favorite quotes is you got to be able to do the consistently basic thing for an uncommonly long period of time without convincing yourself you're smarter than you are, right? So sit in there and just have the conversations, make the offers every day. If it's not working after 5 days, don't tell yourself, oh, there's got to be a better way. Let me try something else. No, sit in here and do the thing, right? Look at the people who have been successful and just do what they say, right? And it can be hard to do that. But yeah, when we were getting started, I guess back to the story. I was an accounting and a finance major. I had an accounting job lined up for college, and I went to the internship. I ended up dropping it and saying, no, I'm going to go full in on real estate. This was in my senior year of college. So I dropped the accounting internship, dropped the accounting major, and just did finance because I only had to take a couple classes for each semester. But then even after I graduated, like I felt this immense pressure senior year just to like grind, grind, grind. 'Cause everyone's getting these jobs. And I'm like, you start to question yourself, like shit, like, like should I get the job or
Right.
whatnot? Not, I don't know if I ever really had that thought, but it's kind of in the back of your mind, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Um, and I ended up having to bar back for 7 months after. So not even bartend, bar back, man. I'm getting ice. I'm cleaning dishes, all these things. Talk about a humbling experience. You go from like being graduating like high honors or whatever in college, right? And finance, and then you just go bar back after college. And you're just like, dang, you're like the lowest
Brutal.
level in the restaurant,
Right.
lowest level. No one respects you, right? So my coworkers were great, but I'm just saying, like, you're just like the bottom of the totem pole.
Right.
So I
Right.
did
Right.
that for 7 months. And then last October was when we went full time because we had been doing it part time. We did like 4 deals senior year. So we knew wholesaling. We had some success, but never went full in. And then last October 2022, so about 14 months ago, that's when we went full in on this. Didn't have any other jobs. We've just been scaling it up since then. But in the beginning, it was tough because, and I think it can be tough. It really depends on your where you are in your situation. I guess I'm pretty fortunate to be in my 20s. I don't have a wife. I don't have kids. I don't have a bunch of like really high expenses. So
Right.
I can take many more risks versus someone who's in their 30s, has a wife and kids, or in their 40s or 50s or whatever. It can absolutely happen, right? But you have to approach it in a different way because you can't live your life like I am because I can be completely selfish with my time and just work from 7 to 9. I don't have to answer to anyone, right? So it's easier for me in that sense. But I think getting started, the biggest thing is the income, right? Because it just takes
Right.
time to build the sales pipeline. So people struggle with, well, I got no money coming in. Well, you got to figure something else out for income, right? If you have a daytime job, stay in your daytime job until you can build this up enough on the side that it's an easy transition and you're not just jumping off a cliff with no income and a family to support. So I
So
think the
that's a
biggest thing in the
question.
beginning is the income. Yeah.
That's a question that I have though. Let's say you have that person that's needs to work. So they have a family to take care of. How could they do this type of work part time?
Mm. It's a good question. I mean, you got however many. This guy Brent Daniels, who I follow a lot in the wholesale space, but he's like, I forget how many hours in the week we have. You have 158 hours in the week, right? So even if you can find a couple hours in the evening to make
Okay, so
calls,
that could
you
work.
just
Okay,
have to be consistent. That's it, right? If it's 1 hour a day from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. and you can do it even 3 days a week, just pick something you can be consistent at. Don't go do 5 to 9 after your 12-hour shift because you're going to burn out after a week. The goal is the long game. So you got to be consistent. So maybe it's Saturday. Maybe you can make dials on a Saturday. I think the best way to get started if you want to get started in wholesale well is what we call squatting up, which is teaming up with people already in the industry. So you don't have to do it all. Like if you don't have all the time in the world, you can go maybe generate some leads and do some of the legwork and then have someone else take it to the finish line for you. And then in the process, you'll also be able to learn a lot about everything, right? So
right.
yeah, you make a little bit less money on the deals, but you're getting a lot of value in the education of how to actually do the deal. Because that's another big thing I see is people not, it's just too many moving parts, right? Okay. Where do I get this data to call? Okay. Then I got to find the phone numbers. Then I got to call the sellers. Then what do I say? Right. Okay. Well, how do I get it under contract? Now I have a contract. Okay. How
You
the
gotta,
heck do I sell this thing? Right. It's just too many moving parts.
right.
So just focus on one, right? Go focus on finding the leads, bring it to a closer who can close the deal. He'll, if he should be able to kind of walk you through everything, keep you along for the deal and kind of show you how it gets to the finish line, right? So you can start to rack up some knowledge so you can go do it on your own.
Very interesting, man. Talk to me about the mindset. You mentioned mindset clearly. You're a very
Mm-hmm.
sharp guy. So talk to me about the mindset. How do you build yourself up this way? To you look pretty confident.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's just reps. I think the biggest thing with sales in general, it's repetition, right?
Right.
I mean, when I was just cold calling, I think I added up that I had spoken to over like 20,000, 25,000 people that I've said, hey, this is Jake. I know this call is out of the blue. Would you consider an offer on your property? Like I freaking say that in my sleep. You know what I mean? Not to mention all like the sales calls and stuff that I've done. So it's got to be over like, I don't know, like upwards of 30,000, something like that, tens of thousands of people. So I'm just confident, I think, with my speaking skills because of that. But I'd say repetition is the biggest thing with mindset. But again, I think being around people to push you through those hard times. But you got to have a good why, right? It's kind of cliche, but you got to understand why you're doing it. That's what gets you through it. Because if you're just focused on the money's cool, right? You can definitely make some big checks and stuff, but it's likely not going to be a good enough motivator to get you through the
Right.
really difficult times. Like, oh, if I make 50K, like it's just not going to. So there's got to be something else that's really motivating you. Maybe it's something you're running away from. Like Alex Ramosi says, reward systems work in two ways. You're either getting chased by the cat or you're a rat, right? You're either getting chased by the cat or you're running after the cheese, right? So the cheese is like something exciting you're running towards. The cat is fear you're running away from, right? So typically the cat is a bigger motivator. So if you're running away from, oh, I don't want to go back to my job as a bar back, right? That's going to motivate me more than, oh, I want to make 20K, right? I'm like, oh, 20K is nice. Hell no, I'm not going back to that bar back job, right? So
Right.
like I will do anything when your back's against the wall. So I think a strong why, like, why am I doing this? I'm doing this to never have to do this again. I'm doing this to set up my family and my kids for forever. I'm doing this for generational wealth, right? I'm doing this to help out sellers. Whatever that is, you got to keep that in mind. That's going to help you through the initially, I think.
Thank you for answering my unasked question,
Yeah.
because I was going there just now. So you follow Hormozy too?
Yeah.
Phenomenal,
Yeah. He's
right?
phenomenal, dude. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I
Offers and
fucking,
leads.
yeah, I got his leads book. I got too many freaking books. The problem is I've been getting into this bad habit of just opening books and reading like 4 chapters and not finishing them. So I got like six
Having too
books
little
open right
time.
now. I got to stay focused here.
Yeah. So you spoke to me about your partner, and it sounded to me like you guys know each other back from the hockey days. Am I right in
No, I
that?
mean we met in college actually. He was
Okay.
uh he was freshman year. He was across the dorm. He lived across the hall. So we weren't really that close then, and we didn't really get close till about junior year in college. But I had always kind of known him, and he's the one who like gave me. I think I don't really remember how it came about, but I just know that he gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that kind of
Oh
set it
wow.
off, right? And I was like, oh, it's super interesting. And I started out like as his intern, literally like his like intern, like because he was learning under another mentor of ours, and I was just doing anything I could to learn the business. Like I would, it's kind of
That's smart.
crazy.
No,
Because
that's not crazy at all.
we used to do email marketing to multifamily owners. That's how he got a lot of deals for this other investor. And when I was starting out, I would like type the email response and I'd send it to him because I didn't know what to say. I was like, is this okay to send? You know, like just did not know anything. I couldn't even send an email, right? Because I
Wow.
didn't know how to talk to these people, which is just funny looking back. But eventually we just collabing. And I mean, now we're just, it's crazy, man. Like this last year has been wild because at the beginning of the year, like I was still cold calling. We didn't even have a team or anything. And we went to a meetup at the beginning in January. And we're like, we should probably get someone on the phone, right? Like we're not going to scale this thing if Jake is just cold calling all the time, right? It's not a very high dollar per hour task, right?
Right.
Like if you can get someone in the Philippines to do it for $5 an hour, why are you doing it? In a sense, you know, it's not a very like complicated conversation. So I think outsourcing that and getting yourself up the ladder because as you build scale a business, you start out wearing all the hats, right? But you slowly start to hire out these positions and you slowly work your way up until you're doing the highest dollar per hour task. So right now I'm a closer. I'm about to hire another closer and then I'm going to be a sales manager, which is essentially the highest dollar per hour task you can do on the acquisition side, right? I'm not actually working in the business, but I'm managing everyone. And it's really just a leadership role. How can I get everyone working at their highest point of contribution, right?
Right.
Like, how can I get everyone working the most effectively as I possibly can? And that's through leadership and
Yeah.
communication and things like that. So that's where I'm really starting to transition of like, being the manager, right, and reading some leadership books. And I'm reading a book called Multipliers by Liz Weissman. Really good leadership book that I'm starting to implement. Already seeing some benefits from utilizing that.
How did you develop all this technical knowledge?
What technical knowledge? No, I just
Yeah.
I definitely love to read for sure.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I took a personality test called the Clifton Strengths. It's a pretty good one. My one of my close family friends works for Capital One. She's like a CEO, C-suite coach. She
Okay.
uses this personality test, Clifton Strengths, very in depth. But I'm like, my number two is like learner or something. So like I love to just like read and learn, but I got to be careful because I'll get like addicted to the learning, and I'll
Right.
be like, oh, this is so great, but remember to actually do the thing, right?
Right. Right.
Which I think a
No
lot of people can get
replacement for
caught in,
learning.
right? Analysis paralysis, because you feel like you're doing things by reading, which you are. You are doing things, but you're not actually doing what's going to
Yeah.
move the needle, right? Like
Right.
if you're trying to make money and get real estate deals, podcast webinars and seminars aren't going to get you really anywhere. You got to actually pick up the phone, right?
Of course.
Or go to the house.
Of course. So, how do you go about working in the business at the beginning of the year to building a team? How do you make that transition?
Yeah, so slow. I mean, you start with one and you go. I think when you're bringing people on, you try to have 6 months of a budget for them at least, right?
Right.
So once you have enough, essentially you're starting out, you're calling, you're doing all the stuff, right? You get a few deals, you have some money in the bank account, then you got to reassess. Okay, how much do I want to put back in the business? If I can have 6 months worth of business expenses to hire one person, all right, let's hire that person, right? And then you get it going, right? You're doing more things, right? So maybe I'm not cold calling anymore, but now I'm following up with the leads and a closer. Okay, we don't have enough lead flow, right? I'm only getting 3-4 leads a day. I need more. Okay, let's hire a second cold caller. We've gotten a few more deals, right? Now I have the capacity to pay for two cold callers for at least 6 months. Okay, so we're good. Bring them on. Okay, boom, boom, boom. Two cold callers going. Man, okay, now we got too many leads. I can't follow up with them all, right? Hopefully, I've had enough deals. I have enough capital in the bank account. Let's go hire a lead manager to manage all these leads, right? And you slowly work your way up, and then because the way I see it, essentially like 3 cold callers, a lead manager, and 2 acquisition managers will complete the loop of acquisitions, right? That's like if you have 3 cold callers bringing in like 10 to 15 leads a day, that'll keep 1 lead manager busy and about 2 acquisition managers busy. That's my prediction. I haven't hired the acquisition managers yet, but what I've seen from other people. Um, so then if you want to go like really build a business, then once you have that all completed and you have all the systems in place and everything, then it's just duplicating, it's scaling.
Right.
Okay, well, if it's 3 cold callers, 1 lead manager, 2 acquisition managers, we could just double that, right,
Double
and
it.
do double the business, right? So that's where that hockey stick growth comes in because you run into so many issues trying to create the systems of like the first people in the positions, right? But once that's all sorted out and you just have to duplicate it, then it's so much easier. Like we just hired a cold caller, and oh my gosh, like she was in and dialing within a day, the same day. Before it take us like weeks to onboard her and do all these things, but
Wow.
now that we have the systems in place, it's literally just plug and play. All right, yep, you wanna get in, great. You're dialing, right? Oh, this isn't working out. Let you go. Just someone right back in, right? Um, so that's why it's like this other book called The E Myth by Michael Gerber. But that just talks about creating systems, right? So as I'm in all these positions, right? When I was a cold caller and a lead manager, and now when I'm closing, I'm writing out everything that I'm doing, right? So that when I go to hire someone in that position, they have everything there that I've been doing, right? So I'm creating these pages, these standard operating procedures, which are like manuals for the position. As I was in each position, I was creating those manuals so that when I went to go hire someone, they could just read through it all and do it, right?
That's
Versus me
amazing.
just trying to like get it out of my head. But yeah.
That's pretty cool, man. Very, very cool. So
Yeah.
you mentioned to me that the ultimate goal for you is to never have to do this again, right?
Mm, heck yeah.
So as the business scales and you're able to do this, take a back seat, take care of your family, build wealth,
Hmm.
when would that happen for you? What's the magic number?
Magic number. Well, the magic number, it's always going to change, right? That goalpost is always going to change for sure. I'm not sure if it's a dollar amount. I mean, I'd say if it's interesting as you scale the business though, because your take home is less and less as you go up. I don't know what the magic numbers. I'm never going to stop. I don't think it's always going to be on to the next thing for me.
That's what.
But
That's why I asked, because I'm like,
yeah,
okay, you don't seem like the type of guy that's gonna do this for 10 years. Get a couple $1 million and then just right into the
yeah.
sunset.
Well, our goal is to get the wholesale business. Is the goal to do okay? So for this context for this year, we've done uh this year we did like 25 deals or something for like 350,000, right? So next year our goal is to do 1 million, right? But then really get some of the systems in place, get the acquisition manager, and then next year we're just going to leapfrog it, go to 4 million, right? Because I think we can just scale it at that point. So we're really focusing on the next year right now. But okay, get it to 4 million, whatever. Like our take home isn't even, it's like, wow, $4 million business to me. I'm like, that's crazy. But then you got all, like after all said and done, you're not making like really that much money,
Right,
but
right.
it's not as much about the money, but about that'll be completely passive for the most part because we'll have the systems and the business built so that that'll be a stream of income for us. And we'll just look at this wholesale business just like we would a multifamily property. It's going to be a cash flowing asset. And then we'll just be able to take that cash flow and go do whatever we want. We're going to buy multifamily along the way and do all those things. But yeah, so hopefully get out of this. Not hopefully, we will get out of this by the end of 2025. Trying to switch my mindset up here because that stuff matters.
Yes, it does.
And yeah, get out of this by the end of 2025. Then on to the next things. I don't know what else the future holds. I know there's going to be some multifamily real estate in there. I imagine there's going to be many more podcasts and speaking engagements and things like that that. Because I do like to speak and share and teach. That's like what really honestly gets me excited. Like if I was just on podcasts all day, just coaching people, that wouldn't even be work for me. So
And you
we'll
have
see what
great
happens.
skills. You're very good at speaking. I could compliment you right
I
now because it's
appreciate
true.
that.
So how about we talk about, you mentioned a couple misconceptions. You
Mhm.
mentioned one misconception. I always like to find out on every field of, industry that I speak to, what is the most common misconception you hear? And maybe one of those you would like to debunk.
Buying rentals is not the best way to get wealthy.
Huh. Tell me more about that.
But I'll reword it. So buying rentals right out of the gates is not the best way to get wealthy, I don't think. So I think that you want to try to get rich and then get wealthy, right? So rich dad poor dad's great, right? Because it tells us let's go live off our cash flow, right? Our
Yeah.
passive investments, right? The difficult thing is that when you actually own multifamily property, that cash flow is typically used for fixing the roof and doing all these things, the upkeep of the property. You're not living off of the cash flow, right? If you
Right.
live off of the cash flow, your property is going to look like a dump in 20 years. That's why we have the whole class of tired landlord. That's why that's like the biggest class of people we get properties from are mom and pop owners who live off of their cash flow for 20 years and don't put a dime into the property, and then the property is a dump in 20 years, right? Um, so I say all that to say that's why we're building this business first. Because if this business can kick off a ton of cash flow, then we'll go buy real estate. So I think it's just you can do it. It really depends on your situation ultimately, right? Let's say you make a ton of money in your W-2, you're making $200,000-300,000 a year. Okay, then yeah, you have the capital. Maybe it makes sense to buy rentals. But for the most part, I mean, if you're making whatever, $50,000-$60,000 a year and you're just trying to save up a little bit every year to
Mm.
buy rentals, it's going to take so long to like get to like 50,000 a month in cash flow. You know how long that would take? Right? You
Right.
can get 50,000 a month in cash flow building a wholesale business in 2 years, 2 to 3 years, right? 2 to 3 years, you can have $50,000 a month or whatever, $30,000 a month in cash flow. That's going to take you so long with just buying rentals. So I think the biggest misconception is like all these millionaires own real estate. Yeah, but they also, most of them had a business that got them rich. And as a result of that business, they ended up having to pay a ton of taxes. So they went out and bought real estate. Right.
Right.
So that's the one thing I think is just get rich first, then get wealthy.
Very interesting. How we keep hearing this about real estate, that it's a
Mhm.
passive investment. Is it really passive, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, hardly. So the only really passive thing is if you invest in multifamily syndication, right? Now, what is that? If you're a limited partner in that. So a multifamily syndication is like a 200 unit project in, say, Texas, right? It's typically split into general partners and limited partners. General partners will operate the deal, right?
Right.
They're going to put it together. They're going to facilitate the rehab and the value add, get the rents up. But they're a 200 unit property. I mean, that could be $60 million, right? So they have to go raise capital. So they'll get capital from what we call limited partners who have no involvement in the deal whatsoever. They're just like, hey,
Right.
here's 50 grand to go towards the deal. If you can just give me 10%, I'll be fine. I'm not going to do anything. I'm sitting in my house, right? That's like really the only complete passive thing, right?
You have
Um,
to go. You have to go work for Grant Cardone, man.
Yeah, literally. But yeah, but owning like a property is not passive whatsoever.
Right.
Even if you
Right.
get property management, you still have to manage the property managers. I mean, it
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
is what it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. I actually
Yeah.
love that explanation. How how about the following?
Hmm.
You're very wise, right? You've shared a lot of nuggets here with me today. Tell me about the best piece of advice you've ever been given.
Yeah. The best piece of advice I've ever been given. I mean, there's so many out there. Um,
Could be about anything. Life, money, relationships, whatever you like.
hmm. I want to say it's something to do with relationships. I just think that I think relationships are everything in this world, right? You'll never make another dollar without a relationship, right? You'll never really have a fulfilling life without relationships. It's really the top of the totem pole, maybe other than your health, because you would die if you didn't have good health. But um, I think treating people with respect and just doing business in the right way. That's the biggest thing. It's gonna come back around, right?
Right.
You can just do things in the right way and not try to cut corners and not try to be greedy. And it's hard not to be greedy, right? When you have these big deals on the table, but just trying to create win-win-win situations, I think is going to serve you so well in the long run, not just in business, but in your life with your relationships, right?
For sure.
And you never know who you meet, you never know who they're going to be and how they may work their way back into your life. So I think always just being aware of that, but understanding that relationships are super important and to always be cultivating. You're a farmer, right? You're always planting seeds with different people. Like even this conversation, our first face to face conversation. Who knows? Maybe we don't really talk for like a year, but something could happen where I think I have a deal or whatever, and it's like, oh, Alex does this, and then oh, there you go. We're back in each other's um, spheres and we're
Yeah.
doing things. So
Yeah. Just like you said, it's about leverage, right? The more connections you have, it's that concept about the 5 degrees of forgot the actual name now. It's like the 5 degrees of connection, where you're only 5 connections away from anybody in the world.
that's
So you
crazy.
get
I haven't heard that.
yeah, you get leverage by just knowing people. As an example,
Yeah.
I'm a banker, right? I come across real estate deals all the time. So
Hmm.
just on that alone, I could be a source of referrals to you. You come
Hmm.
into people that might need financing. I'm a source of financing, so that's quite interesting that you mentioned that. So
Or you know
I
what?
love
Actually, I do know what the best piece of advice I've ever gotten is. This is what it is.
it.
Lead with value. Lead with value, right? Whatever you're doing. Don't think about it, what's in it for you. Always lead with value, right? I'm coming on
Man,
this podcast. It's not about what I can get out of this podcast. It's like, what can I share with any one of your viewers that could help them out, right? Lead with value.
beautiful.
My real estate community that I'm building, Optimize REI, it's not about me trying to sell anyone anything. Lead with value. I want to dump so much value into that community, that free community, that people are like, this guy is insane. I cannot believe this right now. Like everything that you could possibly need to start a wholesale business in this group, right? That's the vision. Um, and that stuff just comes around. It's a universal law. There's a book called The Go Giver. You just got to give, and it comes back around. Lead with
Yeah.
value.
Dave Ramsey says that generous people are highly attractive. And it doesn't necessarily have to be generous with money. It could be with your time, your attention,
Hmm.
your expertise. So value, define value for me because I always hear this, right? This is like common. Oh, be the most valuable person in the room, give the most value, but define how do you become more valuable?
Uh, Well, value is just a perception of whoever you're giving it to, I think, right? It's a perception of worth. So how do you become value? You have to understand who your audience is, who's in your sphere, what do they want? That's how you become valuable, right? It's almost like in wholesaling real estate. You got to understand what your buyer wants to be valuable to that buyer. You can't just go bring them any deal. That's not valuable to them, right? You got to
Right.
understand who you're trying to target and what do they want, and then you bring them value based upon what they need, right?
Beautiful. That's awesome. And I always ask that question too, because as a growing up, I did not grow up here in the States. And every single time I had multiple managers throughout my career, and they just kept saying, "Yo, just become more valuable. The next opportunity will come when you become more valuable." And I was always so pissed off because they would never tell me how to become more valuable.
Yeah.
To me, it was like produce more, right?
Yeah.
Be the number one revenue generator for the region. Then it would make you go to the next step. But it's not necessarily always that, because, like you said, value is subjective according to the receiver of that value. So I could
Hmm.
see how you're building a lot of value with your expertise in your community about wholesaling. So that's
Yeah. I think it's an incomplete statement. Become valuable. Okay. Well, there's just unanswered questions. Become valuable to who? What are they looking for? What do they need? Right.
thank you. Wholesaling. Is it something you're doing locally here in Florida? Is it something you could do throughout the country? Tell me about that.
All over, baby. All over the country. Yeah, we're completely virtual, which is phenomenal. We are doing a lot of deals here in Florida, doing deals up where I'm from, New Hampshire area, but we've just been crushing it down here. So we're going to do more marketing down here and stay in these popular markets. But you can go anywhere. I mean, listen, anywhere you can generate a lead. Like I'll call this year we've done deals in. I don't know if we did one in Maine, but we've done deals in like New Hampshire, Mass, um, Philadelphia, our New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Las Vegas, Florida. Um, so we've done them in numerous different states, like all over the country, right? Because as
Yeah.
long as you can get a seller to sign an agreement and you can find a buyer that's willing to buy that agreement, you can do it wherever. Like our process doesn't change if we're doing it in Arizona, if we're doing it in New Hampshire, right? It's the same thing. Talk to a seller, have a quality conversation, make an offer, send the agreement over via dot loop or DocuSign, sell it to a buyer.
Wow.
On to the next.
Mind blowing. That's actually really, really interesting.
Yeah, we're a completely virtual model. So a lot of people still go in person, but I mean, virtual is just, I mean, come on, it's
Yes.
virtual. Like, how can
So,
you can't get any better than that? I don't have to leave my place to lock up deals. Like that's craziness.
what brought you to Florida?
Uh, I don't even know. I mean, I'd only ever lived in New Hampshire my whole life. So because we're virtual, I was like, well, why not? I do have family in Jacksonville. I've been
Okay.
down here a few times, but I heard a lot of good things about Tampa. I've never lived anywhere warm, and it just sounded like an exciting idea. So I said, let's do
So
it.
you live in Tampa now? That's what you said?
St. Petersburg, but I'm like 15 minutes away from Tampa.
Got it. I'm actually heading over there for the weekend. My sister lives in Tampa.
Oh, really?
I usually go there once a month, so we gotta meet up in person at some point.
Because where do you live?
I'm in Miami, Florida.
Oh, you're Miami. Phew. Yeah, I got to get down there. I've been down there once. It's a wild place.
Yeah.
Um,
yes, it is. But literally, dude, I literally go to Tampa at least once a month. So
okay, that's good to know.
at some point, maybe we do one of these in person. I think it will be a great
Oh
idea.
yeah, dude, 100%. Well, I definitely need to get down to Miami. Like, I would love to. Absolutely love
Yeah,
to.
whenever. Once you make it down here, let me know. I'll drive you around. We'll take you a couple places and just have a lot of fun.
Maybe I'll get back into jujitsu. We can roll around a little bit.
Uh, dude, I'm a big dude, so I don't know how big you are, but I'm a monster.
I'm technical though, I'll be in there. I'll be
Playing
doing my
guard and stuff.
Darces and my
I'm
whatever the moves are.
240 pounds, 6'2", so I'm a monster.
Yeah. But the thing about jujitsu though is it's made for the small guy, you know?
Yes, sir. You're. I love it. I love it. All right, my brother. Anything else you want to go? How do we find you? What exactly are you doing? Are you trying to get some people to join your mission? Tell me more about the business. How do we get in touch with you? How do we get on board?
Yeah, so the biggest thing I'm doing right now is trying to put a lot of energy into this community optimize REI. So it's just a free Facebook group, and I intend to keep it free, just free,
Okay.
right? So the point is for me I host a weekly Zoom session live, like a 90-minute thing.
I'm
Yep.
subscribing, by the way.
Yeah, optimize REI. It's a link in my Instagram bio. You can join it.
Okay. Beautiful.
But I'm doing live seller calls in there, right? I'm calling my sellers. I can call your sellers, show you how to comp properties, right? Walk through different situations. So absolutely any questions you have about getting started in wholesale real estate or acquisitions or trying to find deals, that's what that community is for, right? So there's no excuses for you not to get started because you don't know something, right?
Hmm.
It's a free group. Go join it, hop on the Zoom, and let's answer your questions. Let's do your first call right there. Well, I'll do your first call with you, right? Whatever you need. I want to be there to help you. And one disclaimer on that too is I just want you to join a community. It doesn't have to be my community, right? Um, One of the biggest limiting things I had when I was getting started on social media was like, who am I to preach this information, right? I've been doing it for 3 years, but there's so many people out there that are so much more successful than me, right? I'm only just, I don't even know if you'd call myself successful, right? Like we're building a business, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, certain people resonate with certain people, right? There's going to be certain people that only resonate with you that do not resonate with me, right? But there's going to
Right.
be certain people that resonate with me that might not resonate with my other buddy, right? Or my other people in my group. So I think everyone should get loud, get on social media, create your own communities because there's going to be a certain group of people that are going to gravitate to you only, right? Your teaching style, your way of communicating, the way that you do things, right? So that's the reason to get loud no matter what stage you're at, right? Don't feel like there's always someone behind you. There's always someone behind you. Even if you've only done a couple of deals, there's people who haven't got any deals, right? Maybe you've made a few calls. There's people who have not even made a call yet, who are just, it's like it's an inkling in their head. I'd really love to get started in real estate someday. But you're actually taking action out there making dials. Okay, you haven't got
Right.
a deal yet. You don't have a full-fledged business, but you're somewhere, right? So not letting that imposter syndrome get in the way, which is really difficult in the beginning. But I say all that to say, join a community because it's going to keep you accountable and you're gonna freaking crush it.
No, that's you surprised me a lot today. You've shared a lot of knowledge, very detailed stuff, which I'm actually surprised. Very, very detailed. A lot of information that you could implement almost immediately. Like you are giving out a great deal of information for free. What? Uh, Tell me about the role of social media in all of this. Like how? What brought you to social media? What part does that play in your business? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean it's everything. Just being transparent and vulnerable on there. I think is the biggest thing. So I'm trying to be really get up on my stories, right? So I'm posting my KPIs lately and just kind of really giving you a back end of what's going on with the business, right? What am I doing every day? I think that's it, right? Posting your failures too, right? Provide
Yeah.
value on your posts. I think definitely need to do that, right? Provide value, but people also want to see the day to day. I think at least of like what are you actually doing, right? And then where are the struggles as well? Because the successes are great, but really the only thing people can relate to you on that aren't at your level yet are the failures because they're probably going through the same failures and like, oh, Alex had that failure too. Dang. Okay, man, he can. I can relate to that. And if he's had those same failures and he's at this point, I can definitely get to that point, right? So sharing the failures is huge. And from the side of sharing the failures, a lot of times you can be like, oh, well, they're not gonna think I'm legit, or they're gonna think I'm a fraud if I share this failure about whatever. So, I don't know. People like authenticity, so I just try to um, post the real stuff and yeah,
Yeah.
just be consistent. Consistency is the biggest thing. That's all it really is. Post stuff every day. But it's such a multiplier to get your message out there.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If you post a reel and even if it only gets 500 views, that's a lot of views. Imagine if you were in a room saying that message to 500 people, you'd be like, this is insane. You know, you'd be
Yeah.
like, this is great.
You're actually talking to me right now because that's
Yeah.
that's a challenge sometimes. You're like, okay, how doing all this effort, uh, using all this time, meeting all these cool people, and then it sometimes might not translate into millions of views and stuff, or even thousands of views. But then you get 500, 600, 1,000. Man, in a room, that's a lot of heads.
It is. It is. So I think that's a good way to look at it. But it's just consistency. I mean, you can't like the organic part of like getting the engagement, you can't really buy engagement. So you
Right.
just you just got to be consistent and go do the things and it'll come, right? If you just lead with value, people will find that and they'll want to follow you because of the value and they'll engage and all those things. But um, I'm just trying to build connections. I don't really care about the followers or any of that stuff. It really doesn't mean anything. It's more of just about building relationships like this, like using my social media to get on podcasts and do that's cool. That's
Yes,
great,
it is.
right? Because this is where like a real relationship is built. Social media is like like very surface level. Okay, great. You can see my stories. I can add a little bit of value to you, but I can add real value to you when you get in the Zoom with me and we have a real conversation about where you are, where you're trying to go, or we can meet up in person and have a real conversation. That's like more of the ultimate goal. Social media is kind of just like an initial thing,
Right,
an
a
initial
medium.
way to reach people.
And you've done that today, just so you know.
Yeah.
Impressive. Like your story is impressive. I can relate to you in a lot of ways. We're different people, different
Yeah.
places, somehow trying to do something similar, which is,
Yep.
work on our brand, create a community. So I definitely appreciate having you here today. I hope you had a phenomenal time. And I don't
I
know, at
love
this
it.
point, I always like to open it. If I left something out, maybe something you wanted to touch upon that I did not cover, why not do that now?
Yeah, no, I think you hit it all. I think you hit it all really well. You asked some really good questions. I think you did a phenomenal job hosting. And keep up the consistency, man. I
I
mean,
tried,
episode
man.
12, dude, there's a stat. There's literally a stat. I forget what it is. Like 90% of podcasts do not make it past episode 21. So just keep that in
Uh,
mind. 90% or something really high. I don't know what it is. Don't hold me to that, but
that's
it's like some high percentage hasn't made it past like 21 or 23 podcasts. So keep it
I'll,
consistent. And I see,
I'll
a failure of mine. I had this thing 15 at 5 I used to do, and I just stopped it. I stopped it because I made excuses, and I was like, well, it's I'm going to come out with a better podcast. But in reality, I just quit. I was a quitter with that. So I think I did. I don't know if I hit. Actually, I'd be curious to know if I hit the 21. I might have not hit it, which is actually hilarious. But
I'm not gonna stop first because, well, my idea is not to stop. So, but I'm not going to. Um, I don't know, right? I don't know what the future holds, but my idea is not to stop. I actually enjoy this because of the human interaction. I like to
mhm,
talk to people, man. That's just proximity to cool people like you. That's fascinating to me. Expanding the stuff I know just by having
mhm.
a conversation with people like that. And I actually have four. I have four lined up. Year 12 because of the timing, but I filmed one today in the afternoon, which is gonna be mind blowing, mindset related from a
Let's go.
coach, and I have two more tomorrow. So by the end of this week, I'll be in episode 17.
That's crazy. It's phenomenal, dude. It's absolutely phenomenal. Like it's amazing. I'm
Yeah,
excited to see where this thing goes, and
this is
hopefully
gonna
get
be,
back on here down the line when we're both in a different stage. Maybe we can get it in person or something.
dude, that will be phenomenal.
That'd be incredible.
All right, my man. So I super, super appreciative of you and all the wisdom you shared with me today. If you could help someone out there transform their life with one word, right? Whether that's their health, wealth, or relationships, what would it be?
2 words:
Two words.
show up.
Beautiful. Amazing. Thank you so much, Jake. I really, really appreciate you, man. Thank you for showing up today. Thank you for because you keep showing up for yourself, and I know you're gonna do amazing things. Let's stay connected. You have my cell phone; it's in my signature, so hit me up and we'll be connected, man. Next time I'm in Tampa, I'll let you know, and then maybe we'll meet up and I'll treat you to lunch.
Perfect. I love it.
All right, my man. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.